All right, to be respectful of everybody's time, we're going to get started right here at 1 o'clock on the dot. Thanks again for joining, and really I wanted to share not only how amazing this new EverQuote partnership is, and why I say amazing is really because the cost. Farmers negotiated a cost that makes a lot of sense. Just like when back in the day when I started in 2009 and started working internet leads, the costs were lower. And they had a lot more subsidy dollars that they were giving us, right? And then they backed off that substantially. Well, now they're giving that back. So it makes a lot of sense. And I want to show you back how I scaled my agency at the very beginning using mostly internet leads, and how I defined and refined my processes going through. And this is tried and true today. There's a couple of mega agents in our company that are using these methods right now. And now they're going to scale even faster using these methods. So this is really not only just a masterclass in marketing, it's also going to be how to, the assembly line process and lead management, because that is the most important thing when you get into high volume. You can really drown yourself in high volume and fail miserably and lose a lot of money if you're not set up properly. So that's what this video is going to be a lot about, is how do you set up your agency to win and to scale off of high volume, especially now that Farmers is going to subsidize so much and the cost of the lead is dramatically dropping. So if you guys, probably a lot of you are already in my insurance think tank group, but if you're not, you can join my free insurance think tank group. And then the lead management system, I'm trying not to make this sound salesy, guys. It's really all the things that you're going to see with this kind of lead management is through my agency MVP system. So I want to show you how we are managing our leads, but really how to win with EverQuote. So I'm not going to answer any questions or dive too deep into our MVP system at this time. Now, first things first, how do you activate your EverQuote account? You're going to want to know first off when it's going to be available in your market. It's already live in South Central Territory. California Territory is going to get it on February 17th. And then Midwest, Northwest, Southwest is going to be getting it on March 2nd. And then Great Lakes, North, Northeast, and Southern Plains Territories on March 16th. When it's live, or if it's live in your area, you're going to go, this is how you activate your account with them. First things, from the Farmer's dashboard on the left-hand side, when you first log in, click on Agency Vision. Then you're going to click on Internet Leads, which is the lower middle of the screen. And then a pop-up box appears and you click on Enroll Now. When you click on that Enroll Now, it's going to take you to EverQuote's website, and you're going to create and establish your account with EverQuote. And EverQuote's given us some videos that if you want, we can just chat in that you want a, no, don't do that. Never mind. That will overwhelm Samantha. Email us, todd@agencymvp.com, todd@agencymvp.com, and I'll just deal with the hundreds of emails I'm about to get and forward all the videos to you guys, because I don't think they publicly posted those videos in an easy way to get them. So I'm sure I'll be busy with emails this afternoon. Now, like I had mentioned before, what's really important is the discounted pricing, along with more subsidy dollars, with more AMP bucks. So this is a no-brainer for me to join this. Now, what I really want to do is, I had 6 years when I first started my agency with setting expectations, because when I first started with internet leads, I had the same kind of view that everyone does, that you see internet leads suck, they didn't work. I've heard it all, I felt it all. But what you really have to do is set the right expectations up front if you're going to get into this internet lead game, okay? You're buying leads for the data. It is not easy leads. You would think that if you're spending money on a lead, that they're just going to be sitting next to the phone, easier to call. You're really buying internet leads for the data. And that data is sold to a max of 2 competitor carriers in your area. So 3 total, including you. but you have 2 other companies in your area that are fighting for those people. So speed to contact is really critical. If you call them within 60 seconds, then you're most likely going to get them on the phone. Now, the downside is a lot of big companies like Geico, Progressive, they have their call centers that are getting them on the phone really quick. So make sure that when a lead comes in, you are jumping off what you're doing, or you have someone in your office like a contact manager, which is what I'm going to go over and show you, to making sure you get them on the phone. And just expect up front, talk to your contact manager, that when they make these phone calls to these people, of course they're going to get you're the 3rd person I've already talked to. And if you just have that expectation that this consumer might be frustrated and they might be harder to reach because they don't want to answer the phone, maybe they didn't realize they're going to get 3 people calling them, just have that set expectation up front that they're going to be harder to reach. And one of the main things I love is I bought consent to text and solicit somebody, right? If you're telemarketing, or if you're doing, there's so many rules out there, and it's really hard to get that consent. But with these leads, you bought that consent, so you're not going to get in trouble, which is nice. The other big thing is being able to filter by the type of home, married, claims, their credit. Owning a home is a must, okay? I don't care where you're at in the US, make sure your filter of owns a home is turned on. The reason for me is just overall ROI is much higher because you have a chance to sell a homeowner's policy. So that's a pretty big deal, is making sure that they own a home. And you're able to refund 20% of the leads for bad data. I would say that maybe 35 to 30% of these leads are going to be technically bad. So don't just assume up front that you're going to have some bad leads that you can't get refunds on, right? It's not a perfect system. So just make sure that you understand that I can only get about 20% max refunds, and if they don't meet your criteria, or if it's a bad phone number, things like that, it is what it is. And what I want to show you now is the ROI using internet leads is all about the follow-up, okay? And keep in mind that what I'm about to show you is our older pricing, okay? So in 2018, 2019, I only purchased 548 EverQuote leads. That's all. It's not high volume at all. You should actually be doing about 500 a month if you want to scale an agency off of EverQuote leads. But I'm showing you this for a reason, because I want to prove to you that it's scalable if you do it the right way. So my older pricing was $850 off of 548. That's $4,000 in leads purchased. Over the last 12 months, we sold 9 households off those, and that's about $2,000 in commission. Only a 45%, recoup of your money. And I want to put everybody, remember I said start with the right expectations. If your staff worked 548 leads and they only sold 9 households, and you only made $2 grand off of, that's $200. That's selling 1 a month almost, right? Aren't you going to think that sucks? Man, I'm only making $200 a month on average, a little less than that. We're selling 1 maybe every month, and I'm buying 548, and my staff is just churning through all these leads. Doesn't that suck? Not when you get to year 2. So this is the point. If you have a smart follow-up system, things like claims falling off, or maybe they just were hard to get a hold of, they didn't want to answer their phone again. Remember, you bought the data and you confirmed the data was accurate. There's the right persons at that household. I just can't get a hold of them right now. And 24 months after buying, or within buying those 548 leads, we sold an additional $3,000 in commission. So not including renewals from that first 12 months, I'm already got my money back, and plus some, plus renewals. And that's at the higher pricing. So even with our now subsidized costs for the preferred leads at $464 a piece, which is almost half, I know this is a scalable model, right? But there's a big but. How are we going to set it up? And I want to show you how how agents, like I did when I first started my agency for the first 6 years, how I crushed it. off of internet leads and how current agents right now are really killing it with internet leads. So first problem that everybody has is they're not set up properly. And I want you to think assembly line efficiency. If I'm going to take in a lot of volume, you must be set up properly or you could kill production inside your agency. So first things first, you must have a contact manager. Somebody whose sole job every single day is they're just going to call all the new leads immediately. They are going to sit there and wait for new leads. Obviously, they're going to be calling other people. For example, I'm on the phone, it's ringing. I see a new internet lead comes in, I hang up. If I'm not on the phone with somebody, I don't care that I'm calling someone else. I'm calling that brand new lead that just came in. Validating data and data entry, things like claims. So your contact manager can't quote anybody unless they're licensed, but what they can do is while they're talking to somebody, they can fill in the information and they fill it into our MVP system, and then they can do a quick quote is what we call it, right? Like they just put in their information, hit rate, put in any kind of claims information and save it. And then they're also calling older leads, uncontacted leads. We got to call these people multitude of times before we can get them on the phone. Requesting, and I'm going to go through contact strategy in a couple of slides here. They request refunds on bad leads. It's really important that they're getting at least that 20% return. And then they also need, and you also need as the agent, to watch them on time management per lead. If you're going to get 20 leads a day and somebody is taking 10 minutes to do that quick quote versus you can do it in 5 minutes, that is a huge gap. That's an extra hour and a half where you need to sit down with them and make sure they know all the shortcuts to quote people, that they're not doing too much information, that they have gotten their time management per lead down to the T, right? Time them with a stopwatch if you need to. You've got to get the time management down because that's going to increase productivity, right? Now, that contact manager is going to send the validated leads and the ones that had the quick quote done to your producer. And your producer, or you as the agent, customizes the quote. So you go in there, you really need to make sure the quote was done properly. You don't see anything off. And then you create the presentation and you're going to call back that consumer and give them a presentation. I'm going to go through all of this again in the next coming slides. And that callback needs to happen relatively quickly, right? Because those people are being shopped. A lot of people are calling them back. Something that I didn't mention, the contact manager, when they get them on the phone first, the contact manager needs to tell that consumer, before you switch to anyone else, we're going to do amazing, looking over your information, looks great. So our agent, say their name, is going to be calling you back in 15, 20 minutes. Is that good for you? If it's not, that's okay. When can we set an appointment to call you back, right? They're making sure that the consumer doesn't switch or bind insurance with somebody else in the interim. So that's really important. And one of the big reasons why you want to set up this kind of assembly line is it makes sure that your producers are producing and not chasing validated leads. If you have a ton of internet leads coming into your producer's pipeline, then they're really doing work that somebody else needs to be doing for the reason that it's high volume, and any influx in non-validated leads into your sales pipeline can kill your production, right? If you're chasing unvalidated people, it can really kill your production, or a lot of time is spent. And I don't want to sound like derogatory towards contact managers, because they are absolutely critical. But it's a a harder job and a lower paying job. So we want to focus all of our time and effort and energy. Now, some of you agents might realize, like I do, that contact managers are worth their weight in gold if they're great, right? So we want to make sure that contact managers' time is specifically focused on that hard-driven work that needs to be done up front, and then giving the validated leads to your producers who are really good at closing, right? Those are your killers, the people that are driving revenue into the agency. You do not want to get those people bogged down with unvalidated data. So I want to show how our people in my office specifically use and work these leads that are coming in. first things first, and I want to make sure we can show my data here. Okay. So first things first, our EverQuote leads come into our lead management system MVP, and they show up here. Our contact manager calls them until they get them on the phone. When they get them on the phone, they're filling in their information, and then they assign ownership to the producer. And now the producer logs in, and that goes to their awaiting quotes section. And from here, so I'm going to jump back and forth real quick. Hopefully you guys don't get dizzy. So the new lead section is where the contact manager is working. It stays in that new lead section until it's validated. And then the marketer assigns ownership to the producer, and it advances that household to awaiting quotes. And then the producer is calling from the awaiting quotes section in their lead management side of things. And they will call, this is an MVP, it's ranked by who's most valuable, most likely to close. And here's the really important part, because with internet leads, you've got to differentiate yourself. And how our producers do it is when we get that consumer on the phone, we click on show quote comparison, and we're doing a live quote comparison. The consumer can see this. We text it or email it to them. And now we're giving them a value sales presentation right in front of their face. So I have other videos about the sales presentation. I don't really want to dive into that or highlight MVP any more than I've already done. But this is the workflow, and the reason being is because this keeps that assembly line approach there, and it's making sure that my marketer has a specific role. They're spending time gathering the data, doing the quotes, and my producers aren't touching them until they become a prospect and they're ready to bind. So if the producer feels like a lead is really hard to reach, they will reassign the lead back to the marketer. I have a slide coming up that kind of goes into contact strategy. We'll dive into that later. And if a producer, once the producer reaches out and gives the presentation, they're either going to mark them as quoted in our system and follow up later, or they sold it. So that's the assembly line approach that you need to think about with your leads. Now, really, really, really important. This is probably one of the biggest reasons people fail with internet leads is cash flow. A lot of people jump into internet leads and they think that they're going to get a high enough ROI in the first 12 months, and they did not properly calculate how much cash flow they need to have up front to make this work. And unfortunately, there's so many people out there that preach, insurance is, it's so easy, get in here, you get renewal income, it's so amazing. It is, right? Once you get up and established. But the problem is you've got to have cash flow reserves up front, especially if you're going to get into high volume quoting that's going to cost a lot of money. So I want to go into some calculations here of setting an extra budget for 1 year. And it just so happens that this is what I did my first 5 years. So I want to give you an example. I had, when I came in, an extra I think it was about $25,000 saved up, and I was ready to start my business. So you need to figure out, one, how much money in leads can you invest per month? And I don't want you to consider a return on your investment, because we're talking cash flow. How long without any income coming in can you survive? You need 12 months, period. How much will a part-time contact manager cost you? And then I want you to make safe assumptions. In my area, I'm going to assume a 1.5% close rate in the first 12 months. Something that I'm trying to talk to corporate about is I've heard people say that when they're promoting this EverQuote promotion, a 10% closing ratio. And I was just like, oh my gosh, no. 1.5 is my average close rate in my market. Now, if you're in a really competitive market, I would say Georgia's a good example. Assume a 3%. That's pretty safe. You guys have great rates in your area. And this is something that you can tweak up and down, but conservative is always best. So in my area, the Dallas market, we're having a really rough time with rates, 1.5%. So here's an example. In an uncompetitive market, 1.5%, I buy 6,000 leads in 12 months. With our new cost of $464, that's 27 grand. And that's about 18 to 19 leads per day, including Saturdays. And here's a breakout of how I recommend scaling, which is exactly what I did. And just jumping through it real quick, I'm not going to go line by line, but what I did is I assumed that my cash flow, I'd need an extra 23 grand, let's call it. And then by year 2, I'm cash flowing. And then by year 3, once I have enough revenue from renewals and things like that, then I can add another producer full-time, move that contact manager to a full-time producer, and hire another part-time marketer. And I've scaled my leads. Again, year 5, I've scaled my leads. So you need to do calculations like this to make sure that you can cash flow 1, and then 2, assume a safe closing rate in your area, and you can scale it. So if you can't handle 6,000 leads, which is a lot, drop it down. Only do 2,000, right? So you need to know your numbers though, and that's a safe assumption that you can use in your numbers. Again, this is not considering any time of bonus structure. I did assume a 5% loss year over year. So by year 5, I'm at 80% renewals retention. Pretty conservative, and this is what we did. So jumping into contact strategy. First call, again, happen within 60 seconds. You're gonna want to have some sort of alert set up. Whether your phone rings or there's a ding that goes off in the background like MVP has, you need to be alerted when an internet lead comes in. A big tip, try double calling, okay? People are screening the calls. If they don't answer the first time, call them right back. Don't leave a voicemail right then. And if they answer on the second attempt and they seem a little frustrated, like, why are you calling me? Say, oh, I'm sorry, I forgot to leave a voicemail. And that's the perfect end. Then you just jump straight into, hey, well, I got you on the phone. And then you go through your pitch. If they say they didn't want to quote, this happens all the time. You're the third person that called me. I didn't want to quote in the first place. And then one of the scripts we like to use is, funny thing is the person right before you said that, and I saved them a lot of money. It only takes about 2 minutes to verify your information that I got from you, right? Say got from you because we got your information because you submitted something. Is your only vehicle a 2013 Ford F-150? If you jump straight into the questions, about half the time you'll get more information out of them. About half the time they're going to hang up on you. And that's when your contact manager should request a refund, saying that they didn't request a quote. Second attempt. Oh, by the way, guys, contact strategy. I get this from people all the time. Hey, what's your contact strategy? What's your contact strategy? This is not a science. What I've found is after the second or third attempt, you really got to train your people, and I'm going to say this in a second, but you really got to train your people in their follow-up methods, why they're following up, how they're following up with people. It is not an exact science. I do not want you to follow this to the T, okay? First couple of attempts, yes, but after the third or fourth attempt, you're going to need to come up with what do I think is the best strategy here for this specific household. So second text, after validation and data entry of initial quote, we typically will send a quick text out right after. So we double call them, they still don't answer. We don't leave a voicemail because I don't want them to know our phone number. And then we are doing the initial data entry from the contact manager. Once the contact manager sees that it's a valid quote, they immediately fire off a text. And that text is going to be something like, hey, we got your information, working on your quote. It looks great. When's a good time to follow up with you? What we're trying to do, and you can change the verbiage of that however what you got to think about is, how do I stop them if they're on the phone with somebody else? How do I stop them from binding insurance with that person they're on the phone with? Like, you need to block them. Hey, before you switch to anybody else, I have an amazing quote for you. When's a good time to call you? Block them, right? If there's bad info, request a credit. So that's another reason why we do a validation of data before we keep blowing up their phone more than 2 times. If I pull in a lead and it's completely wrong everywhere, then we'll just go request a credit if it's a bad lead versus going through 9 steps of trying to contact them. And here's another script that we'll use. If you have a solid looking household, you might want to email them. You know, that's talking about how we can block them up front from the other two carriers. On the third attempt, what we really want to do is call first, and this happens usually next day. So first day, we want to try double calling and texting. If we get no response, then the second day, we're going to do a call. And then if there's no attempt on the third by a call, I say email and text. In my office, I have a rule. I love calling. And the reason I love calling is I want to make sure my staff don't have call reluctance. It's amazingly simple to get used to texting and emailing because you don't have to interact with somebody. But in my office, I want to make sure that I don't kind of breed the notion that it's okay to have call reluctance. Like if we're not talking to somebody, we're not selling something. So I want you to call. If we save them money, then we will send them that quote comparison without speaking to them. Only if we know for a fact that we saved them money, right? If we don't know that we saved them money, we don't send them the quote, because if you send them the quote and there's a chance that you're higher, they might just write you off and just think you suck. So we only send the quote if we know we saved them money so that we can block somebody else from buying insurance. And then another trick that we know people do, and I need you guys to pay attention to this trick because there's a disclosure. A lot of agents will send somebody a home quote with a high deductible to get your premium low. And that's kind of like a teaser rate in the mail. It's to get people to call you. Now, some people hate it. They never want to do that. Some people love it because it gets people to call you. Now, you must make sure you bring this up while you're doing your quote. And then two, if they don't want to lower it, you need to have them sign a different form, like a disclosure form saying, hey, we are writing you a 2% wind and hail instead of 1% maybe, or wherever your area is. We recommend a 1% like you had in the past. You sign here stating that you recognize that you wanted a 2% deductible. So that's kind of like protect yourself, a disclosure statement, having it separate versus just them signing your main memorandum. The fourth through the seventh attempt, again, we preferably call people, and we're also going to be tracking, you know, when we're calling people, what time of day did we call in the past, looking at the call notes, call history, trying to call them in the evenings versus mornings, just really looking at the household and say, hey, when's usually the best time of day to reach them? And that's something that your contact manager needs to be asking as well. When's usually the best time of day to reach you? In a high volume game, that's going to be a big deal at recontacting people that you're chasing. And, you know, once you get to about that eighth call attempt, it's time to start strategically chasing these people. Are they a household worth chasing? Are they valuable? Are there any underwriting issues? If they're worth chasing, in my office, it's buy or die, right? Continue calling, call at all different times, try nights and weekends, all sorts of things that you need to do to make sure that you're tracking these people and you're calling as many times as you need to. If there's any underwriting issues, then we pipeline them out 30 days before a claim falls off. That's a big, big one in our system. Is we've sold a lot of households because the claims fell off. And if you think about internet leads, these people are price shoppers, and it's typically a price shopper because they had a claim sometime in the last 3 years. The rates went up, they're pissed off, they've been paying so much. And so even though you have a filter for no claims, if you have that filter turned on, now you can chase these people when they fall off. Or another good one to watch is if there's any teenagers in the household, right? Because we love teenagers. You can watch and see maybe when they go to college and really track and see when they might be out of the household and follow up then. These are really important factors to getting by that 24th month, double your investment, okay? And really scaling off the data that you're buying. You must, here's a big must. Agents must monitor the contact strategy and ask your staff why they did what they did. I can't stress this enough. There's been so many times I've been coaching one-on-one with agents, looking at their accounts and their MVP accounts and looking, and the agent just doesn't understand why somebody was pipelined one reason and the staff didn't either. Well, I just thought I would do it this way. You've got to coach, mentor, monitor your staff and understand why they're doing, why they're following up when they should, why they're using scripts that they should. Once you've got that set up and once your team is trained, that's when you start becoming top in the nation. That's when your systems are scaling. It's because they know what they're doing and you're managing and monitoring it, right? It also uncovers call reluctance. So many times I've had staff, that I found out, I thought they were doing well, but then when I looked at why they're doing something and how they're following up with people, maybe they were sending only texts. And I would say, hey, why aren't you calling them? Well, because I already called them 3 times. I don't care, call them 100 times. And so you really uncover the call reluctance and bad strategy methods that they're not following that you give them. So make sure you're mentoring and monitoring your staff. Presentation is everything with internet leads because I want you to be different. Now, first off, recognize these people are price sensitive, right? So they're really price sensitive. They want a quote, they want it now, give it to me now. But also realize that they're also frustrated. So you got to be careful about how you're going to present, and attitude from you is everything. You've got to be upbeat. You've got to be friendly. You got to get them to like you. People buy who they like, know, and trust. So get them to like you. And then we do the quote comparison so that we can offer them value. Because I guarantee you when Geico gets them on the phone, or Progressive, or that agent down the street gets them on the phone, they're really just trying to give them the cheapest they can, and because they understand they're price sensitive. But what I want you to do is be different. I want you to give them a quick presentation and say, hey, did you know that with Liberty Mutual, your current liability limits were this? And we recommend this, and here's why, right? Going into that value sell approach. And not only one, if you get them on the phone first, does that keep other people from calling them? But 2, now you're different than the guy who called them before, just saying, hey, we can get you a rate for XYZ. And now here you are telling them why they need what they need. They didn't even know that they had what they had. And by the way, I'm only $5 more, or I'm, whatever the price may be. You were different. And you gave them a presentation that they can see live with you over the phone, or email it to them if you're using an Excel spreadsheet, whatever you're using. Be different. Show them the value. Now, granted, there's some times where you do have to be really quick with people. They're short with you. I just want the price. So this approach isn't for everybody, but the people that do respond to this approach are a lot easier to close when you use it. And they appreciate the value that you gave them versus the person down the road who just quickly gave them a price. So make sure that you're doing that. Geo-targeting, I can't stress this enough. And the reason why I'm going to stress, I know some of you guys are in rural areas. So geo-targeting might not be as big of a factor, but I want to say it is, because you can market your entire state. So first things first, if you're going to be in high volume, you got to expand your territory, because there's no way you can buy 5,000, 6,000 leads unless you're in a huge metro population area. It's going to be really hard to get any kind of real volume. So you got to expand your territory. And what I mean by geo-targeting, let's go through that. So it's making sure, looking at the zip codes in your area and tracking and dialing in on your money spent, and helping you understand what zip codes you should be focused on and what you shouldn't. To give you an example, here is my geo-targeting. So from my MVP account, I can download this Excel spreadsheet, and it shows me all my zip codes, and how many quotes we've done, closing ratios, and all of this. So what I do is the zip codes that you see in green, those are my better zip codes. By the way, this is a demo zip code list. If you copy me, you're not copying real data. So don't try, or you'll just waste a bunch of money. So from here, everything in green are zip codes that I want to double down in. After 12 months, I figured out where's farmers competitive, where should I really focus all of my money and really drive my marketing dollars to get quotes. The yellow ones are ones that I was doing, but they don't look so great. Maybe after a rate change, or maybe after competitors in my market decreased their rates, or somebody came in and started buying rates, Now what I can do is stop spending money in those areas and really double down my money in the green areas. So geo-targeting is extremely, extremely important if you're going to get into bulk buying or bulk, really any kind of bulk marketing, right? Because this isn't just internet leads. It's, you know, what if I'm doing a lot of referrals and I really want to get into referral relationships? Wouldn't it make a lot of sense that you want to go to places where you know you're more competitive so that that mortgage broker's not pissed off every time you come by with a high rate and it's screwing up DTI and you got to give them a 5% win and out? No. So geo-targeting helps you expand, but there is a problem with geo-targeting. By the way, it's applicable to everybody. You know, everybody's wanting to buy insurance. They don't care if you're local. If they're buying online, they don't care if you're local. I get that all the time. If somebody's buying online, they don't care that you're local. End of story. So here's what I was about to say is, but you got to spend a lot of money to locate the ideal areas. So for example, in Texas, it's a huge state. Dallas-Fort Worth, we're getting nailed with rate. I can move to another metro area in Texas, buy leads for 90 days, and go back to my geo-targeting and reallocate spend in the right areas and start honing in on other metro areas to get my lead volume up, right? These are some questions that you want to make sure you're tracking. So you don't have to use MVP, obviously, but you could keep your own Excel spreadsheet and really look at the zip code, your closing ratios, what lead type, home or auto, should you target based on closing ratio. Let me show you why this is so important. So with your, for example here, average home savings and average home closing ratios, what I want to do is I want to make sure that if I have an area where I'm just crushing it with, let me find one, home is really tough. Let's say I'm crushing it in this zip code with home, I'm going to buy a lot of home leads. Like that's the zip code I need to buy a lot of home leads in. If I'm crushing it with auto versus home, I'm going to buy a lot of auto leads, right? That's where you start with. But if I'm buying a lot of auto leads, I want to make sure the filter is they must own a home, right? Because in our business, since when was farmers competitive on monoline, right? So always make sure that you're targeting the right zip code for the right line of business, right policy type, and really drive your ROI and your spend in the right places. It's really important. And this takes a long time, right? This takes at least, I would say, 6 months and spending a lot of money before you start seeing data and results. Again, granted, if your staff are properly filling things in and you properly are coaching them and monitoring them, it takes about 6 months to go, okay, hey, I can start making these decisions. But what's really cool is the feeling you get when you actually know your numbers. Like, wow, I'm making intelligent decisions besides, hey, where should I go now, right? So it's really, really important to know your numbers. I already said leading, closing ratios, and average savings. So I hate, you know, it's been 40 minutes. I feel like I just kind of vomited all my knowledge that I've learned over 10 years. So let's summarize it real quick. New price allows scalable model. That new 464 subsidized preferred lead cost with cost share and AMP bucks and our increased subsidy. Oh my gosh, I'm excited about it. That's actually the reason why I haven't bought a lot of EverQuote leads. I'm just buying one a day right now. But when that got cranked on and I go, oh my gosh, I'm getting $22,000 more in cost share, I'm getting AMP bucks. This makes perfect sense now to go back to what I grew my agency on. I'm hiring a contact manager. I'm probably going to get 2 contact managers going on this and really start to scale up the internet lead model because it's going to allow me to scale and get that PGB and really go, 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 go. Make sure you find out if you can cash flow. Do not get into this unless you know you can cash flow for a year. And I don't care if you have to dial down the volume to 1,000 leads instead of 6,000, right? That's just use the number that works for you and make sure you can cash flow for at least a year with those leads and with a contact manager. You as the agent should be the producer, unless you can afford and you're at the stage where, no, I can afford a producer and a contact manager, right? set up that assembly line approach with your staff and your systems, making sure your contact managers contacting, validating, entering in the initial quote, transferring it over to a producer who's ready to close, using a presentation. If they can't get a hold of somebody, getting it out of their pipeline back into that contact manager's pipeline, making sure that that assembly line is set up, you know, the speed to contact, the time it takes for you to quote somebody. You've got to monitor these things if you're going to dive into high volume. You've got to have a smart lead management system. I'm biased with MVP. And again, though, training your staff and follow-up methods, geo-targeting to refine and increase your ROI. And that's all you got to do.